here's a company that's close to my heart. Wham-O of California, based in St. Gabriel. Started in 1948, and this first catalogue I picked up was 1957, but that's long before I got to know the company. And these are all roughly in chronological order. And I didn't come in until the 70s, the late 70s. I came across the company in 77, 78. And for the next 4 years, I collected the stuff avidly and corresponded with them and got to know some of the people. Never met them, unfortunately. But what a company and what wonderful things. Best known perhaps for the Hula Hoop and the Frisbee and perhaps a few of the other things like Super Bounce Ball and so on, which I'll touch on. But this is an amazing company. I've thoroughly enjoyed having this correspondence with them and also getting as many of the old catalogues as I could, because I think they're such a wonderful display of inventiveness and bringing such fun to the audience. What started this thought was I went through my cupboard under the stairs as usual and found a box up there which I hadn't touched for 30 years, this box here, and to my amazement I suddenly remembered this is something that Richard Knerr, who founded the company, has sent me about 1985, and it's full of little samples he sent me for free. We were doing a lot of corresponding and exchanging of things, and this was a little free gift. I was supposed to meet up with him that summer, but something went wrong, we didn't. He was in a hotel in London. So I'm going to treat this as a lucky dip and dip in and out of it and show some of the products they've made, many of which I've had in my collection. There's one here which I'm going to not be able to show because it's all completely dried out. It's one of those things that makes multicoloured balloons, but after 40 years, there was 2 tubes, and when I cut one open it was just gone to almost solid plastic. So there are things like that which you just have to put aside and say, I'll keep it for posterity, but it won't actually work as a toy. Come up to this end of the thing for lucky dip, and of course we've got Frisbees which still work. They'll work forever, and there's a big, nice range of Frisbees that Richard sent me. I was very pleased with them. I've got a collection of about 50 Frisbees, I think, but the core of them would be the special ones that Wham-O made. They were superb flyers. Although the distance, of course, it could be surpassed with aerobies, which came in a few years later. There's a wonderful, colourful one there, transparent. So that was a nice thing to receive. All free, that was what's so amazing. What else we've got? Oh, over here, this is something I never found on the company, and I wasn't that keen on them at the time, but boomerangs, since I've been to Australia, came a bit more into my field of things I like to do. Never learned to fly a boomerang properly, so that's the Wham-O version of it, which came out sometime or other, not sure where. Let's see what else we've got in this. Other things which are this. Oh yes, this was a very early one, which is lethal actually. It's one of the first ones they produced in 1948, a very, very strongly made catapult. But look what they're using, little ball bearings, deadly. The idea was that the Americans would go out into the wild and shoot at pigeons or other pests and probably kill them or injure them. But I didn't dare take it out of its box, so those look very lethal for such a strong and solid looking catapult with very, very strong elastic. So I'd rather leave it unopened because it could be a little bit dangerous. Never mind, it was a free gift, so I'll keep it for references. Now there's a lot of these little small Frisbees. Look at these, little loads and loads of tiny ones. They made them for every occasion, and I think he sent me a whole bunch of these as well. Oh yes, for every occasion. Some of them actually very colourful. You could almost put these on the wall and decorate. Ones for happy holidays, just everywhere you could hang them up. And they do fly. They even make the miniature golf course type things with these. So you had to fly them out. A funny thing with chains, which then traps them and like a golf hole. So there's lots of those. Now something else is rather large. This is a funny thing. I don't quite gather what it is. I'll take it out, but it's a very slightly bizarre thing because it's not one of the ones that ripples when you stroke it or something. It's made of some sort of material, so the idea is to pose it like that, and then put it round your wrist or put it round your neck as a little scarf or something like that. It was a slightly bizarre idea which they did in the early days, and 98 cents and all. So that was something I'd never seen before, never come across. But it's beginning to expect that I would find quite a few of those. This is the one they were very well known for, was the Super Bounce Ball. I think there might be a few more in here. If I can. Oh yes, there's a large one. Look at this. This is shaped like a proper baseball, and it's got a wonderful coefficient of restitution, they call it, and these small ones bounce even better. They talk in the in some of the literature I've read, or dropping them from for a very large one of these from a 15-story building. It bounced up like that, it went up to about 9 or 10 stories in height, and then fell down on a car and ruined the car. Ooh, nice story for the papers, but that was a very big hit, and they did that for many years. It was a discovery made by chemists sometime in the 70s or 60s, it might have been, that a certain type of rubber or plastic would have a very high coefficient of restitution and could be made to make games for kids much more exciting. This is one of their many water toys, which I've tried once. It's good fun, and we might possibly in summertime get out some of their water toys, which this is the only one that was included in the package. But this one you put into a hose pipe and it expands into a great big long tube and then release it, and it's under considerable pressure because that's got a very, very thick skin to it, and when this expands it's got lots of pressure to push the water out a long way. The water toys weren't quite so good for this country because we don't have such long, hot summers like we have in California, which is very well known for that as well. Yes, there's another of those tubes which has failed me. Never mind. There's one here which is this is a silly plastic super stuff here. It's a sort of funny powder with chemicals that when you mix it with water, and it's quite complicated. I looked at the instructions, I thought, no, I'll leave it for another 20 years. But it eventually makes that gooey plastic which you use for all sorts of extraordinary things. It bounces, it stretches, it blows up like a balloon. It does almost everything you can imagine a plastic doing, I think. So very bizarre, but I like things like that. What else have we got here? Oh yes, we've got some of those. I think, oh yes, look, there's something here which I did very much fancy. It's called Slapcie, which they only sold for a few years. I think this is one of the best things they ever made. Oh, I have to put it into too hard. Have you seen this before? It's unique. They did made I think possibly under license, a version in Taiwan, but this is the original plastic version. It does have action like that. Slapcie they call it. Very nice. And it does various things, but my favourite item, which for this, and they show it on the thing, is to make it gently walk down a slope. And I've made a slope here. It's a bit bizarre this, but I found that the underneath plank, which is a balsa wood, isn't quite sticky enough to hold it. So it's got to actually allow it to flutter down without falling off. Oops, you're falling off, dear. Set yourself right, that's it. On a good run, and a big wide one, it'll go a long way without having to be adjusting things. So a Slapcie, I think, was very original. And when they stopped making it, I was a bit disappointed. I would have bought another 50 more, I think. But there we are. There's one more item here which I want to show you because I was amazed at this. Yes, this is right, the last item here. This is Silly String, which they produced sometime in the 70s. The old thing which you shake, do you remember? Extraordinary. I thought, well, hang on, this is some stuff sent to me in 1985, so it's nearly 40 years ago. Well, it will still work. Amazingly, it did. I was absolutely astonished that other stuff has completely congealed, but this one here still works after all those years. You have to shake it. It produced a little extra head, and when I squeeze it, out comes, oh, here we go. Woo! Do you remember that stuff? Wow, look at that. After all those years, it still works. Well, that's what I feel about the company. It's eternal. They keep coming up with lovely ideas. I'm very glad that they're under their own mark again once more. They've been part of Mattel and other companies over the years. But now they're running out of the old people. And I came across their company at New York Toy Fair. I thought, wow, Wham-O's alive again. How marvellous. Let's go and see what they're up to. What a lovely thing to get.